The air on Veridian Prime smelled like smoke and fear. The colony wasn't big, just families and miners hoping for a better life. Then the Empire came. Their ships were dark shapes against the stars, landing fast and hard. Soldiers poured out. They weren't human. They wore hard armor, moved quickly, and spoke in sharp clicking sounds. People ran. Men tried to fight back with mining tools and old rifles. It was useless. The Empire soldiers were too strong, their weapons too powerful. They rounded people up in the dusty town square. The colonists stood close, trembling. Children cried softly. The Empire soldiers separated the group. They pushed the men and older boys roughly to one side. Then they grabbed the women and younger girls, pulling them away. Helen Vance stood tall. She was a medic, used to helping people, not fighting. Her husband, Daniel Shaw, strained against the soldiers holding him. "Helen," he yelled, his voice raw. The Empire commander, taller than the others, stepped forward. He pointed at the women. His words, translated by a box on his chest, echoed coldly. "Resistance brings punishment. You defy the Empire. This is justice." He didn't explain further, he just gestured. The soldiers forced the women to their knees. Helen looked straight at Daniel. There was no fear in her eyes, only fierce anger. The soldiers raised long, cruel-looking rods. There was a bright flash, a sharp crack, and Helen fell. One by one, the other women fell too. Silence crashed over the square, heavier than the smoke. The only sound was a choked sob from the men. Daniel Shaw felt like his heart had been ripped out. He watched Helen fall, her eyes still locked on his. The soldiers kept the men pinned, helpless. The Empire commander watched the executions without expression. When it was done, he turned and walked back towards his ship. His soldiers followed, leaving the bodies lying on the ground. They didn't care about the men anymore. The message was sent. The Empire ships roared back into the sky, leaving Veridian Prime burning and broken. Daniel finally broke free, stumbling to Helen's side. He cradled her head. Tears streamed down his dirty face, cutting paths through the grime. Anger, hotter than the fires around him, burned inside him. Someone found a working recorder. Daniel picked it up, his hands shaking. He pointed it at Helen, then at the other women. His voice was a low growl, filled with pain and fury. "Look," he said to the recorder. "Look what they did. They killed them. For nothing. Lynn." She fought just by standing tall. "Tell Earth. Tell everyone. Fought. Make them pay. Make them all pay for this." He sent the message out into the void towards home. The recording traveled fast through the communication networks. It reached Earth. People watched it in their homes, on street screens, in government halls. Shock turned to disbelief, then to a deep, cold rage. The images were clear. Unarmed women, executed by emotionless soldiers from the stars. In a secure room deep beneath Earth's surface, General Marcus Ford watched the recording. He watched Helen Vance fall. He heard Daniel Shaw's broken voice. He saw the faces of the other women. His own face was like stone, but his eyes burned. Round the table, other leaders looked pale, horrified, angry. General Ford stood up. The room went quiet. "This," he said, his voice low and dangerous, cutting through the silence, "is not just an attack. This is an extermination. They killed our sisters, our daughters, our mothers. They think we are weak. They think we will beg for mercy." He paused, looking at each person in the room. "They are wrong. We answer this brutality. We answer it with annihilation. Not just defense. Not just pushing them back. We declare war. A total war. A ruthless war. Till the empire that did this is dust. We fight for Helen. We fight for all of them. We fight to make sure this horror never touches another human soul." His words weren't shouted, but they carried the weight of mountains. Earth had its answer. The quiet was over. The war had begun. Earth changed. The shock and grief after seeing the Veridian Prime recording turned into something hard and cold. A single word echoed everywhere. War. Not just any war. A war to end the empire that killed their people. Nations stopped arguing. Old enemies shook hands. Everyone worked together. The goal was simple. Build weapons, build ships, and hit back. Above Earth, in the cold silence of space, giant shipyards buzzed like angry hives. Workers in thick suits crawled over skeletal frames of new warships. Day and night, the work continued. Sparks flew as metal was cut and welded. The ships looked different from anything built before. Sharp angles, thick armor plates, and strange glowing barrels fitted onto their sides. Evelyn Rhodes stood on a viewing platform watching the construction. Her eyes were tired, but focused. She was young, but brilliant. Her job was weapons. After Veridian Prime's scavenger teams had risked everything to grab broken pieces of Empire weapons from the battlefield, Evelyn and her team studied them. They didn't understand everything, but they learned enough. They learned how to make human weapons hurt the invaders. The glowing barrels on the new ships were the result. Human-built cannons firing stolen alien energy. Make it work was Evelyn's only order to herself, repeated every hour. On the bridge of the largest new ship, the UEF Retribution commander Paul Grant looked out at the growing fleet. His face was like carved stone. He remembered the faces of the women from Veridian Prime. He remembered Helen Vance's final stare. There was no room for doubt in him, only a cold, burning purpose. He spoke to his crew, his voice flat and hard. Remember why we're here. Remember what they did. There will be no retreat. We take no prisoners. We give them exactly what they gave our people. Ruthlessness. That is our answer. His words weren't shouted, but they settled on the crew like heavy chains, binding them to their grim mission. The day came. The first fleet was ready. Ships named Vengeance, Defiant, Helen's Promise, and others led by the Retribution powered up their engines. Below, billions on Earth watched the sky, hoping, fearing. The ships didn't look like explorers anymore. They looked like knives pointed at the stars. Their target was near Jupiter. Spy drones had found a convoy of Empire supply ships, guarded by a single massive warship, a dreadnought. It was a test. Could human ships built so fast stand against the Empire's strength? The fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel near the swirling gas giant. The Empire's ships were there, sleek and menacing. The dreadnought dwarfed the human vessels. Alarms blared on the Retribution. Paul Grant didn't hesitate. All ships, attack pattern Delta. Focus fire on the dreadnought, nor the small ones. Space lit up. Blue bolts of energy, copied from the Empire's own weapons, shot from the human ships. They slammed into the dreadnought's dark hull. The big ship shuddered, but its shields held. It fired back. A beam of pure destruction lashed out. The UEF Defiant was hit directly. The ship exploded in a silent, terrible flash of light and fire. Gone, just like that. Dozens of lives snuffed out. A wave of horror washed through the human fleet. But Paul Grant's voice crackled over the comms, cold and clear. Hold the line, Helen's Promise. Vengeance, flank it, keep firing. The battle was chaos. Smaller Empire ships darted around, firing at the humans. The dreadnought kept pounding them. Another human ship, the Courage, took a hit to its engines. It started spinning helplessly. Captain, we can't hold, came a desperate call. Paul Grant saw the crippled Courage drifting towards the dreadnought. He saw the dreadnought turning its main gun towards the Retribution. A terrible plan formed. It was the only way. Courage, Paul said, his voice suddenly heavy. New orders. Full thrust. Ram that dreadnought. Aim for its engines. Silence. Then the reply came. The captain's voice, thick with understanding. Acknowledged. Retribution. For Earth, for Veridian. The Courage, trailing fire and broken metal, turned its nose. Its engines, damaged but not dead, flared with its last power. It shot forward, not trying to dodge, but aiming straight for the giant enemy ship. The Empire dreadnought saw it coming too late. It tried to turn, to shoot it down. But the Courage was too close, moving too fast. It slammed into the dreadnought's side, right where the engines glowed. A second, much larger explosion tore through space. When the fire cleared, the dreadnought was broken, huge pieces tumbling away. The smaller Empire supply ships scattered in panic. The human fleet was battered, 2 ships gone, many others damaged. The bridge of the Retribution was filled with smoke. Crew members coughed, some were injured. Blood smeared a console. They had one, but the cost was written on their faces and their broken ships. Paul Grant stared at the wreckage of the dreadnought and the Courage. There was no joy in victory, only a grim satisfaction. They had traded blood for victory. They had shown the Empire that humans wouldn't break. They would fight fire with fire, cruelty with ruthlessness. This was just the beginning. The message was clear. Earth was coming. The victory near Jupiter was bitter. Ships were lost. Good people were gone. Earth celebrated the win, but the commanders knew the truth. The Empire was vast. They needed to hurt the enemy deeper, smarter. The war moved closer to home, into the asteroid belt. The Empire had taken mining outposts there, turning them into supply bases. New faces joined the fight. Laura Mitchell wasn't a soldier on a big ship. She was quiet, moved like a shadow. Her job was sabotage. She led small teams into the dark rocks of the belt, targeting Empire fuel depots and communication hubs. They used explosives, hacked systems, vanished before the enemy could strike back. It was dirty, dangerous work. One slip meant capture or death. Laura didn't talk much. Her eyes were hard, remembering the faces from Veridian Prime. Each explosion, each blacked-out base, was a small piece of revenge.
Oh.
Then there was Kyle Peterson. He'd been on Mars Colony when the Empire raided it early in the war. He hadn't died. Not quite. The medics saved him with machines. Metal arms replaced flesh ones. Sensors fed information directly into his brain. He wasn't fully human anymore, but he was pure fury. He led the Night Reapers, squads of soldiers in black armor who struck fast and vanished. They hit Empire patrols, destroyed scout ships, left no survivors. Kyle felt little pain, little fear. He felt only the burning need to break the enemy that had broken him. The humans were biting back hard. The Empire didn't like being bitten. The response was swift and terrible. They didn't send ships to hunt Laura or Kyle in the asteroids. They went straight for Mars Colony. Mars was a symbol, a place where thousands lived, families, workers, children. It wasn't a military target. It didn't matter. A huge Imperial fleet appeared above the red planet. They didn't land. They didn't fight soldiers. They pointed their biggest weapons down at the cities, the domes, the homes. Bright beams of destruction lanced down from space. On Earth, screens showed the horror. The domes cracked open like eggs. Cities vanished in fire and dust. Millions of voices were silenced in moments. The images were worse than Veridian Prime. The scale was unimaginable. The message was clear. Resist, and we erase your worlds. The silence on Earth was deeper than space. Shock turned to a cold, hard rage unlike anything before. General Ford spoke to the people. His voice was rough stone. They think this will break us. They think fear will win. They're wrong. Mars cries out, we answer. Not with tears, with fire, with something worse than they understand. Deep in hidden labs, scientists had been working. They studied the broken bodies of Empire soldiers recovered from battlefields. They found a weakness, the Empire's armor, their ships, even their bodies. They used strange, living materials, like plants, but deadly. Earth scientists created an answer, Project Howl, tiny machines. Like viruses designed to rot that living material from the inside. To turn their strength into weakness, their armor into dust. Laura Mitchell received the new weapon for her next mission. A heavily guarded Empire data hub hidden inside a large asteroid. Her team planted the small Howl devices near the hub's vital systems. Then they set explosives. The blast wasn't huge, but the Howl devices released their invisible killers. Empire soldiers arriving to repair the damage found their tools crumbling. Their armor plates started to soften, to rot. Panic spread faster than the infection. Inside the damaged hub, Laura's team fought through confused, weakened guards. They reached the central computer core. Laura plugged in a device, downloading everything. Alarms screamed. More soldiers were coming. Kyle Peterson and his Reapers appeared like ghosts, holding them off in the smoky corridors, their weapons blazing. Hurry, Laura, Kyle yelled, his metal arm crushing an enemy weapon. Laura's device beeped. Done. Got it. Pull back. They fought their way out, leaving the hub dying, infected with Howl. Later, safe on a hidden ship, Laura looked at the stolen data. Most was battle plans, supply routes, valuable, but expected. Then she found something else. Encrypted files, marked with a symbol like a tangled web. Her decryption program worked slowly, painfully. Finally, it opened. Schematics filled the screen, not of ships or weapons, of a person. A human woman, young, but her eyes ... empty. Wires connected her to a huge, pulsing machine. Notes described her as the Nexus, the control. Laura's blood ran cold. She read further. This woman, this prisoner, wasn't just held. Her mind was being used to control the Empire's vast armies of drone soldiers and ships. She was the key to their power. And her name, buried deep in the code, was Isabella, a human name. A human mind enslaved. Laura looked up, her face pale but fierce. She transmitted the discovery directly to General Ford. "Sir," she said, her voice tight with a new kind of anger. "We found their heart, and it's one of ours." They turned a human into their weapon. She remembered Helen Vance, remembered Mars. "We have to get her out, turn their weapon against them, rot them from the inside." The path to victory, or terrible sacrifice, had just become horrifyingly clear. The stolen data burned in General Ford's hands. Isabella, a human mind enslaved. The Empire's secret weapon. Freeing her wasn't just rescue, it was a chance to cripple the enemy. But the place was a fortress, hidden near Neptune. A massive structure, grown like dark coral, not built. Getting inside seemed impossible. Adrian Cole felt the weight of the mission. He wasn't a typical soldier. He was quiet, thoughtful, trained to understand minds, to feel echoes of thoughts. They called it empathy, a tool for interrogation. Now they hoped it could reach Isabella through the machine that held her. He felt sick, thinking about what she must have endured. Years trapped, her mind used. He remembered Veridian Prime, remembered Mars. He pushed the sickness down, replacing it with cold purpose. He would get her out, or die trying. The mission ship, the Whisper, slipped through Neptune's dark orbit. The Empire base loomed ahead, a jagged shadow against the blue gas giant. Laura Mitchell and Kyle Peterson were back. Laura guided the ship through sensor blind spots she'd found in the stolen data. Kyle and his Reapers prepared for the fight inside. Everyone wore thick suits. The air inside the base was poisoned to humans. They docked in a hidden maintenance port, cutting through seals. The inside was worse than expected. The walls pulsed faintly like living tissue. Strange, wet growths covered surfaces. The air tasted metallic and wrong through the suit filters. Lights flickered unevenly. Adrian felt a pressure building behind his eyes, a low hum in his bones. The base itself felt alive and hostile. Kyle's Reapers moved first, clearing a path with silent efficiency. They encountered drone soldiers, moving with stiff, unnatural precision. The Reapers fought hard, their weapons flashing. The drones fell, but more came. The base was waking up. Alarms started wailing, a harsh, screeching sound. Laura led them deeper, following the schematics. The pressure in Adrian's head grew stronger. Sadness, anger, a deep, endless tiredness. It wasn't his own. "We're close," he whispered, his voice tight inside his helmet. They reached a massive door, sealed tight. Kyle placed explosives. The blast shook the corridor. The door groaned open. Inside was a nightmare. A vast chamber, dark, except for cold, blue light coming from a central structure. It looked like a giant, twisted throne, made of the same pulsing coral as the walls. And sitting in it, connected by thick cables snaking into her skull, her spine, her limbs, was a young woman, Isabella. Her eyes were open but empty, staring at nothing. Her body was thin, pale, almost like glass. Machines whirred around her, lights blinking. She was the heart of the beast. Adrian stepped forward, ignoring the shouts of the others. He had to reach her mind. He approached the throne. The pressure became a crushing wave. Despair, terror, the vast weight of controlling millions of drone minds. He gasped, stumbling. He saw flashes. A child taken from Earth. Cold hands, pain, years of darkness. The endless noise of the hive mind she was forced to command. He pushed harder, focusing on his empathy, sending out a single thought, clear and strong. Asterisk Isabella. Your name is Isabella. You are human. We are here to take you home. For a second, nothing, then a flicker. A tiny spark of awareness deep in those empty eyes. It touched Adrian's mind. a weak, fragile thought. Asterisk home? It was filled with confusion and a desperate, buried hope. Suddenly, the chamber doors burst open. Real Empire soldiers stormed in, not drones. They raised their weapons, firing at Kyle's Reapers. A fierce firefight erupted. Adrian ducked behind the throne as energy bolts scorched the air. He looked at Isabella. Her eyes were clearer now, focused on him. Pain filled them, but also a dawning fury. The machines around her sparked erratically. He saw it. Her will fighting against the throne's control. A nearby drone soldier stumbled, firing wildly at its own comrades. Isabella was fighting back. "We have to break the connections," Adrian yelled to Laura, who was firing nearby. "Now." Laura tossed him a small, powerful cutter. Adrian grabbed it. He looked at Isabella. "This will hurt," he thought, hoping she understood. "But you'll be free." He activated the cutter. Its bright beams sliced through the thick cables attached to her arms and legs. Isabella screamed, a raw, terrible sound of pain and release. Which cables severed made her shudder violently. Adrian saw blood where the cables tore free. The machines shrieked in protest. Lights flashed red across the chamber. Finally, only the thickest cable remained, plugged directly into the base of her skull. Adrian hesitated for only a second. He met Isabella's eyes. The emptiness was gone, replaced by a burning, terrifying rage. She gave a tiny, sharp nod. Adrian cut the last cable. Isabella arched back, a silent scream on her lips. Then she slumped forward, free. Adrian caught her before she fell. She was light, trembling. Her eyes opened again. They locked onto Adrian. The rage was still there, cold and fierce, but now it was focused. Her voice was a rasp, weak but clear, filled with a lifetime of stolen pain and fury. "They made me a weapon," she whispered, her gaze sweeping the chaotic room, the battling soldiers, the hated throne. A strange energy seemed to crackle around her. Lights flickered wildly, some drones froze completely. Let's show them what that means. The fight for the throne room wasn't over. But the throne was empty. And the weapon it held was now awake, angry, and pointed at her captors. Adrian held Isabella tight. Escape was the next step. Using her power, that was the war. The Empire fleet arrived, filled the space near Earth, countless dark ships blocking the sun. It was their full strength, their answer to the stolen queen and the ruined base near Neptune. Fear gripped Earth below. This was it. Win or die. General Marcus Ford stood on the command bridge of the UEF Retribution. The ship was scarred, repaired many times. He watched the massive enemy fleet on the screen. His face showed nothing, but his hands were clenched tight. He remembered Veridian Prime. He remembered Mars. He remembered Helen Vance. "All ships," he said, his voice calm but heavy. "Hold position. Prepare for final defense. Protect Earth." Commander Paul Grant stood beside him on the bridge of his own ship. He looked at the overwhelming enemy force. He knew the odds. They were bad. But he also knew Isabella was free. He glanced at a smaller screen showing the medical bay. Adrian Cole sat beside Isabella. She looked fragile, wrapped in blankets, but her eyes burned with a fierce, cold light. Wires from Adrian's empathy device still connected her head to the ship's systems. "Is she ready?" Paul asked Ford, his voice low. "Oh, duh. Ford didn't look away from the enemy. "She has to be. Or we fall." The Empire attacked. A wave of destruction surged towards the human lines. Ships fired. Space became a nightmare of explosions and energy beams. Human ships died. Shields failed. Hulls ripped open. The Retribution shook violently. Lights flickered. Alarms screamed. Crew members fought fires, dragged wounded comrades. Isabella flinched in the medical bay with every hit. Adrian held her hand. "Focus, Isabella. Find them, like the drones." She closed her eyes. Her brow furrowed in deep concentration and pain. Adrian felt it too. The vast, cold network of the Empire's mind-controlled soldiers and ships. Isabella pushed her will into it, a single human thought against the crushing weight of the Empire's command. Stop. Turn. On the bridge, Paul Grant saw it first. An Empire destroyer firing on a human cruiser suddenly veered off course.
Damn.
It crashed into another Empire ship in a silent, fiery bloom. Then another enemy ship spun wildly, firing randomly into its own fleet. A ripple of chaos spread through the Empire lines. Ships hesitated. Movements became jerky, confused. Isabella was fighting back, turning their own weapons against them. But it wasn't enough. The Empire flagship, larger and darker than the rest, pushed forward. Its main weapon, a planet-killer beam, glowed ominously, aiming straight for Earth. It ignored the chaos Isabella caused. Its commander knew the core threat was the human fleet protecting the planet. Paul Grant saw the targeting beam lock onto Earth. He saw the weapon powering up. He knew the retribution couldn't stop it. Shields were failing. Other ships were too far, too damaged. He made a decision. It was the only way. Like the courage at Jupiter, turned to his crew. Set collision course. Full power to engines. Aim for the flagship's main gun. His crew understood. No one argued. Hands flew over consoles. The ship, battered and burning, turned its nose. Its engines roared with every last bit of power. It surged forward, not dodging enemy fire, but charging straight at the giant flagship. "Grant, what are you doing?" Ford's voice crackled over the comm, filled with sudden horror. "Adding time, General," Paul replied, his voice steady. "Give Isabella her shot. For Earth." The retribution flew like a spear, a burning arrow of defiance. The Empire flagship saw it coming. It tried to turn its massive bulk. It fired everything at the charging ship. The retribution took hit after hit. Sections blew apart. But it kept going, driven by Paul Grant's iron will. It slammed into the flagship, not at the main gun, but just below it. The impact was colossal. Metal screamed and tore. The flagship lurched violently. Its planet-killer beam fired wildly, missing Earth, cutting a fiery path through empty space and clipping its own escorts. The collision was the signal. Isabella screamed, a sound of pure fury and focus. Adrian felt her mind explode outward. She didn't just disrupt the drones now, she commanded them. "Attack your masters." The effect was instant and terrible. Across the entire Empire fleet, drone ships turned their guns inward. Drone soldiers on troop carriers turned on their commanders. Empire ships fired on each other in a frenzy of self-destruction. The orderly attack dissolved into utter chaos. The Empire fleet began to tear itself apart from the inside. Amidst the exploding ships, General Ford saw his chance. Escape pods jettisoned from the wreck of the Retribution. Paul Grant was gone, but his sacrifice had opened the door. Ford ordered the remaining human ships forward. They pushed through the dying Empire fleet towards the crippled flagship. Ford led the boarding party himself. They fought through smoke and sparking corridors filled with panicked enemy soldiers. They reached the flagship's command deck. The Empire warlord stood there, surrounded by dead guards, his face twisted with rage and disbelief. He saw Ford, recognized the human general. "Savages," he spat. "You fight like mad animals." Ford raised his weapon. His eyes were as cold as space. He saw hell advance. He saw Mars burning. Saw Paul Grant's last charge. "No," he said, his voice quiet and final. "We fight like humans." He pulled the trigger. The shot hit the warlord in the chest. The alien leader fell. Ford didn't stop. He placed a small device on the flagship's main power core. "For all of them," he whispered. He turned and ran. His team barely made it back to their shuttle before the device detonated. The flagship vanished in a silent sun of fire. The battle ended. The broken remnants of the Empire fleet fled, or were destroyed. Earth was safe. The cost was enormous. Ships lost. Heroes dead. Worlds scarred. Later, a message went out from Earth, carried on every frequency, aimed at the stars. It showed the ruins of the Empire fleet. It showed the warlord's dead face. The words were simple, clear, and carried the weight of 1 billion souls. Harm one human, and we will erase you. Your worlds, your legacy, your future. This is our promise. On a quiet observation deck, Isabella looked out at the stars. She was free, but the throne's mark was deep. Adrian stood beside her. She didn't smile. The fury still burned, but now it was a guard, a warning. She had been a weapon for the enemy. Now, she was Earth's sentinel. The war was over. The watching had just begun.